In a dramatic twist straight out of reality TV, tensions between Kris Jenner and longtime partner Corey Gamble have reportedly reached breaking point. According to sources, Kris is done with the relationship, but Corey isn't planning to walk away quietly.
You've seen them smiling at red carpet events, whispering secrets between poses. But what unfolded in that VIP box in Vegas? Something shifted, and when Kris Jenner walked away mid-concert, the rumor mill started churning. Corey Gamble didn't just walk into Kris Jenner's life. He glided in like he'd been pre-approved for VIP access to one of the most exclusive inner circles on the planet. They first met in 2014 at a party in Ibiza, thrown by none other than designer Riccardo Tisci for his birthday. Kris, newly single after separating from Caitlyn Jenner, was in full "I'm living my best life" mode. Corey was working in the music industry, connected to Scooter Braun's management empire, and had the kind of smooth, unbothered presence that stood out even in a room full of A-listers.
Corey is about to go to war with Kris Jenner. At least that's what these streets are saying. Baby, remember this video I did the other day about the way Kris Jenner is tired of Corey and his childbearing hips?
From that night on, Corey became a fixture, not just in Kris's life, but in the Kardashian universe. He wasn't a cameo. He was in episodes, at holidays, in family group photos, and front row at the Met Gala. And their relationship didn't fade after the early spark. It lasted, becoming one of Kris's most enduring romances. The 25-year age gap didn't seem to faze either of them. In fact, Kris leaned into it, calling Corey her forever date and praising his calm energy in interviews. For a woman who manages billion-dollar brands, he was the rare presence who didn't seem to need managing. At least that's how it looked from the outside.
My mom has been out of the dating game for decades, so I want her to have fun again and to meet someone. But I just hope that she really thinks things through and doesn't just rush into anything.
But in Hollywood, the longer a relationship stays in the spotlight, the more invisible threads start to show. Over the years, Corey has been painted in the press as everything from Kris's rock to her accessory, depending on the headline. He's kept a relatively low profile, letting Kris take the spotlight while he played the steady plus one. Yet even with that polished public image, people close to them have whispered about disagreements behind closed doors. And lately, those whispers have been getting louder. It's July 26, 2025. Las Vegas is electric, buzzing with the kind of energy only Beyoncé can generate.
Kris Jenner and Corey Gamble are on the brink of breaking up, but it's turning into a drawn-out saga as he refuses to walk away without being fairly compensated for all the hell he suffered over the past decade.
Her Cowboy Carter tour has taken over Allegiant Stadium, and in the roped-off VIP section, the crowd is just as star-studded as the stage. Cameras pan for glimpses of familiar faces, and there's Kris Jenner, sharp in designer tailoring, diamond bracelets catching the light, next to Corey Gamble, whose presence at her side has become almost as expected as the music itself. But if you were one of the lucky few in that VIP section, you might have noticed something off. It wasn't a blow-up. There was no shouting over the bass, but there was a shift in body language that's unmistakable if you've ever been in a relationship long enough to know. The look. Witnesses described Kris leaning in, speaking with a clipped tone, her jaw set in that practiced, reality TV version of control.
I've heard from so many people that you're secretly married.
No, I'm not secretly married.
Let me see your hands. Looks like it.
Corey responded quietly, but with an edge. Seconds later, Kris stood up, adjusted her jacket, and walked away. No smile, no backward glance, cutting through the crowd like someone who wanted to be seen, not looking back. Corey stayed put, his eyes scanning the stage, but not really watching the performance. Khloe Kardashian, who had been chatting a few feet away, noticed immediately. She moved toward him, speaking in a low voice, her hand briefly touching his arm in what looked like a mix of comfort and damage control. Whatever was said, it didn't erase the tension in his expression. For a family that's built empires on controlling the narrative, letting a moment like this play out in public is rare, which begs the question, was this a crack in the armor or a message?
I do think that Kris is the queen of NDAs. I do believe that anybody, and hear me out, I believe anybody that's been with someone much older than them deserves compensation if you've given them years.
Just a month before the Vegas incident, the couple was halfway across the world in Venice, Italy. Draped in old-world glamour for Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's wedding, it was the kind of A-list event where even the gondoliers probably had publicists. Kris arrived in full power matriarch mode, dressed to turn every camera lens her way. Corey was there too, tailored and polished, standing just close enough to signal he belonged in her frame. But after the ceremony, as guests prepared to head to the reception by water taxi, something small, at least on the surface, set them off. According to a professional lip reader hired by one tabloid, because, yes, this is the level of detail we're dealing with now. Kris told Corey she wanted to take the boat alone. No explanation, no smile, just, for God's sake, I'd like to travel alone. Corey, caught off guard, leaned in, trying to clarify, maybe thinking he'd misheard over the splash of the canal and the chatter of guests. But Kris didn't elaborate. She simply stepped into her water taxi without him, leaving Corey standing on the dock. On paper, it's a trivial moment. In reality, it was the kind of microdrama couples know too well, the silent signal that something's simmering beneath the polite surface. To the outside world, it could be chalked up to a travel preference, but when you put that scene next to the Vegas walk-off, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like a pattern. And for a duo that's weathered a decade of public life, patterns like that don't go unnoticed. Here's where it gets tricky, because if you only looked at Kris and Corey through the glossy filter of reality TV, social media posts, and red carpet interviews, you'd think they were bulletproof. On the Kardashians, Kris has called Corey her rock, praising his patience, his loyalty, even his sense of humor. They've been filmed laughing over dinner, dancing at parties, and sneaking off for quiet getaways that seem like something out of a lifestyle magazine. And when Kris does her classic power couple Instagram posts, carefully lit, perfectly captioned, Corey is right there beside her, often in a crisp suit or coordinated designer look. But that's the thing about curated images. They're just snapshots. Behind the scenes, insiders say the relationship has had its share of strain. Friends of the family describe Corey as laid back to the point of being unbothered, which works until it doesn't, especially for someone like Kris, whose life runs on deadlines, deals, and the constant hum of brand management. The Vegas clash, the Venice walk-off, put them together and you start to see cracks in the polished veneer. Publicly, they're still a couple.
Corey, on the other hand, seems determined to make his exit on his own terms or make headlines doing so. Fans are left wondering, will Kris pay up to protect the family's carefully crafted reputation?
Privately, the tension seems harder to hide. And the contrast between the two is what makes the story so magnetic. Are they genuinely in love but hitting a rough patch? Or are we watching the carefully staged final act of a relationship that's already run its course? If there's one thing the Kardashian orbit guarantees, it's that whispers turn into headlines faster than you can refresh a feed. The moment Kris walked away from Corey in Vegas, the gossip machine kicked into overdrive. Online forums lit up. Paparazzi shots of Corey looking tense became clickbait gold. Suddenly, sources close to the family were telling tabloids the two were on the brink of a split, that Corey had reached his breaking point, and that this wasn't just another lover spat. It was the beginning of the end. Some outlets even claimed Corey had started quietly floating the idea that he wouldn't walk away without what he considers a fair payout for the decade he spent in Kris's world. The speculation didn't stop there. A few unverified reports suggested he might even be considering a tell-all memoir, a dangerous move in the Kardashian empire, where NDAs are practically part of the prenup. Of course, none of this has been confirmed. Neither Kris nor Corey has issued a statement, and their public appearances since have been carefully managed. Smiles for the cameras, no trace of tension. But here's the thing, the Kardashian-Jenner family doesn't just live with gossip. They've mastered the art of weaponizing it, which means if these leaks are real, someone wants them out there. And if they're not, someone's planting them. Either way, the result is the same. More questions than answers, and a public itching to know what's going on behind the gates of Hidden Hills. To the casual observer, this could all be chalked up to a couple having a bad summer. But to people who understand how the Kardashian empire works, it smells like strategy. Because in Kris Jenner's world, nothing, especially not a public spat, is without calculation. And if Corey is as savvy as insiders say, he knows that too. Let's start with the money. Corey was already working in the music industry before Kris, but being tied to the Kardashian machine gave him a different kind of platform. He's traveled the world on private jets, sat front row at fashion weeks, been photographed alongside billionaires. That's not just lifestyle, that's branding. If this relationship ends, Corey walks away with the kind of name recognition most talent managers could only dream of. But he also knows Kris isn't in the habit of letting anyone leave with unvetted stories about her or her family. That's where the NDA whispers come in.
And I know you sat by while the Kardashians sat there and sucked out the creativity and life force of every black woman in their orbit, packed it up and sold it back to mainstream America. And do you feel like now that it was sucked from you?
People close to the situation claimed Corey signed ironclad confidentiality agreements early on. Standard practice when you're dating into a brand worth billions. But NDAs don't erase leverage. They just change the shape of it. If Corey really is considering a memoir, even hinting at it could be a negotiating tactic. It's not about spilling every detail. It's about reminding Kris that after 10 years, he knows where all the pressure points are. From Kris's side, she's been here before. Exes, former friends, even staff members have tried to cash in on proximity to her family. Some succeeded in stirring up headlines. Few actually managed to do damage. The difference here is that Corey wasn't just in the room. He was part of the room. He was there for family fights, brand launches, crisis meetings, and quiet moments no one else saw. That makes him valuable and potentially dangerous. So is this really about love fizzling out? Or is it about negotiating an exit package from one of the most tightly controlled celebrity dynasties on Earth? In a world where relationships can be both personal and transactional, the line between the two is blurrier than ever. So where do they go from here? That's the question keeping this story alive. If the past month is any indication, Kris and Corey aren't rushing to clear the air publicly. No Instagram statements, no "we're stronger than ever" photo ops, just carefully curated appearances where they're either all smiles or nowhere near each other. There are a few possible paths this could take. 1. They patch things up behind closed doors, hammer out whatever's been causing the friction, and reemerge as the unshakable couple the public's used to seeing. In Kardashian world, that's entirely possible. They've rebuilt public narratives before, and Kris is a master at flipping a storyline. 2. This is the slow roll toward a quiet split. Not the kind with dramatic press conferences, but the kind where one day you realize Corey hasn't been in an episode for weeks, and Kris starts showing up to events with a longtime friend in the +1 slot. If there's money or an NDA involved, it could mean a drawn-out legal dance before anyone makes it official. And then there's option 3, the wild card. What if Corey really is playing hardball? A tell-all, even a heavily veiled one, could be lucrative. Risky, yes, but lucrative. And it wouldn't have to be a scorched earth memoir, just enough behind-the-scenes detail to make headlines for weeks. Even the threat of that could shift the power dynamic between them. For now, it's all speculation. But here's the thing. This isn't just any celebrity couple. This is Kris Jenner, the architect of a media empire, versus the man who's been standing next to her, watching how every move is made for 10 years. If a real break is coming, it won't just be about a relationship ending. It could be about control, reputation, and who gets the last word in the court of public opinion. At the end of the day, no one outside their inner circle truly knows where Kris and Corey stand, and that's exactly how the Kardashian machine likes it. What we do know is this: relationships in the public eye are rarely just about romance. They're about image, influence, and sometimes survival. Whether this is a rough patch smoothed over by the next red carpet, or the opening act of a very public unraveling, one thing's certain: both Kris and Corey understand the value of timing. And in their world, the right reveal at the right moment can change everything. So maybe the real question isn't, are they breaking up? But when will we know? And who will tell the story first?